All right, guys and gals, we are going to look at altered dominant chords and kind of the same thing, tritone subs. They're very closely associated, and you could actually think of them as exactly the same thing. So the first thing I'm going to point out is we're going to start with this altered dominant concept. Altered obviously means we're changing something, an altered extension, meaning 9, 13, 11, any of the upper numbers, right? Let's for now just think about an altered dominant chord as being a sharp 9 chord, sharp 9. Okay, I'm going to explain this stuff here in a minute. Let me just first show you how this sounds. Here's a sharp 9 chord. Doesn't that sound great? As the videos that I posted, if you're in the class, indicate, Jimi Hendrix, uses this sound. The reason why they're so cool sounding is, here's a D7 sharp 9 chord. Here's my D. Here's my all-important third. Here's my all-important 7. Third and 7, and sharp 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I usually play dominant 7, 7, 8, 9, sharp 9. Notice that the sharp 9 is the same as a minor third. So you could say, but why is it the same as D minor, right? Well, that's because we're going to use both the regular third, the major third, mi, so, mi, do, 7, with that sharp 9 on top. So in that sense, it is not a third. It is actually a sharp 9 because we're going up into the upper extensions, 9s and so on. Okay? So it has this rub because it is a half step away from the third, which is what makes it so cool sounding. Sharp 9 chords. So here's what I want you to think about. A sharp 9 chord being an altered chord. Okay, when we see altered written, that's how you can think of that. However, we're going to add one thing. We are going to add one extra note. We're going to add the sharp 9's pair. It's treble. It's brother in treble. Note, and that is a sharp 5 or a flat 13. This note. So here's, if you think about do, mi, so, key of D, here's the sharp 5th, right? You could also think of that note as being a flatted 13 up here, right? So here's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 flat, right? So sharp 9 and sharp 5 go together. It's kind of like our all-important 3rd and 7. Here's our all-important sharp 5, sharp 9. They run together in a pack, okay? So all of that is to say, these things right here that we see, these are all these different ways that we can notate what's called an altered dominant, which means sharp 5 and sharp 9. You can see C7 alt, standing meaning altered. C7 sharp 9 sharp 5, kind of written in a horizontal fashion here. C7 sharp 9 flat 13, same. C7 sharp 9 with the flat 13 in parens. C7 plus 5 plus 9, because again they're looking at that plus 5, as the flat 13. C augmented. Augmented triad means plus 5, okay? So that's kind of a different one. We don't see that all the time. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, we just see it like this, sharp 9. And with that in mind, we're just going to throw in the sharp 5 for fun, okay? Just give it to them, altered. We're just thinking altered, all the same thing, okay? Now, how do you play all this stuff, right? How do you get your hands on it so quickly? Here's the best part. You already know these chord voicings. We have learned them before by a different name. Okay, this chord right here, yes, it's a D7 altered chord. Here's the root. We know it, however, as this. A flat 13. That's how we know this chord, A flat 13. The rootless voicings, A flat 13. Check it out. 2, 5, 1, and D flat. Remember that? Hopefully you're still working on that. 2, 5. There's my A flat 13. So here's the deal. If I put an A flat in the bass, then that chord right there is an A flat 13. Right? In A flat, I have my flat 7. I have my 9. I have my 3 of A flat. And I have my 13. Okay? However, if I play that chord and put a D in the bass, or have the bass player play a D, whoa. I mean, this sounds good, right? A flat 13 sounds good. It's a hip sounding chord. Check this out. That has a lot of tension. When we put a D in the bass and play the same chord, what does that give us? Gives us all important 3rd and 7, which we have to have, 3rd and flat 7, sharp 5, sharp 9. 2 needed notes, 2 sprinkles, big time sprinkles, powerful sprinkles. That's sort of like hot cinnamon or something. You know what I mean? Like, listen to that. It's really adds a lot to the chord. So all you have to think about to figure out how to play these chords is to simply look at that altered chord and say, okay, I'm going to go a tritone away and play the 13th chord. So here's a good example of that. Here is, I'm not sure what, oh yes, I had an accidental, yours is correct. But if I see an A7 altered chord here, I'm just going to think, what's a tritone away from A? Tritone away is a flatted 5th, E flat. Then I'm going to play E flats, E flat 13. That's what I'm going to do. Our rootless voicing E flat 13, which is this. Okay, you may remember that. But I'm going to put an A in the bass instead of E flat. Now you don't have to worry about the bass. We can let the bass player play that note. You just have to voice it as a tritone away. So that's the quick substitution. Here, and quick way to grab the chord. If you see G7 altered or G7 sharp 9, think tritone away, flatted 5th, D flat. I'm going to find my D flat, left-handed rootless voicing. There it is. D flat 13, okay? But a G is going to be in the bass. That gives us, again, all important 3rd and 7, sharp 9, sharp 5. Okay, now, how do we put that into a 2-5-1? Well, let's try it. We are going to make the 5 chord an altered chord, or a sharp 9 chord, however you want to think about that. We're going to play the regular minor, then G7 altered, or G7 sharp 9, resolving to C major. So let's try that. Okay, normally this would be our progression, right? Which sounds great, sounds totally fine. But if you look at this is the key of C, right? We're a lot of white notes, you know, we're totally within the tonal center of C, which again sounds great. But it could be more interesting if we put a couple of extra notes that aren't in the key of C. Hence, we're adding those sprinkles, right? How about this? Whoa. So I'm playing that G chord now as a G7 sharp 9, sharp 5 chord, otherwise known as a G7 altered. Simply by replacing this chord here with a tritone away 13th chord. And it just gives it that nice chromatic kind of sound, right? Compared to ye old original version, diatonic version, totally fine. Maybe if I have that chord progression a bunch of times, I want to do something different with it, right? Duke Ellington was thinking tritone substitution. Duke Ellington, I should say, really Billy Strayhorn, who wrote Take the A Train, on this line. I mean, and that's D flat, right? So tritone substitution and changing something to an altered chord is kind of the same thing, really, because check it out. Maybe the bass player plays a D flat here. I'm thinking D flat. You may ask, well, what's the difference? Well, there isn't any difference. It's just what the bass note is. Between altered dominant chords and tritones, it's the same thing. You can just think tritone away. That's how you should be thinking. So 2 chord, then instead of the 5, think a tritone away from that, which is D flat, resolve to there. Look at how that sets up that motion. D, D flat, C. It's chromatic. And you can get away with anything chromatically, right, if you do that. Let's check out one other last important thing. Here is my G13 chord, right, my 5 chord. What's the 2 most important notes? Can I hear you? Louder. 3 and 7. There's 3 and 7 of G, right? Here's my 3rd, here's my 7. They happen to be down here, okay? What's 3rd and 7? 2 most important notes of D flat. 3rd and 7. Ah, same 2 important chord tones. So if I'm just playing 3rds and 7s, that works either way. Like if you asked me, what chord is that? I would have 2 answers for you. G7 or D flat 7. I don't know. It's the same. It's not until we put the root in till that decides it, right? So tritone substitution, if you look down here, it's the same thing, only the bass player now is going to play the D flat. Up here, when it's an altered chord, the bass player is playing a G. That's why it's a slash chord here. D flat 13 with a G in the bass. Piano players play the stuff to the left of the slash. Bass players play the stuff to the right of the slash. Okay? Here's a 2-5-1 where the bass player is playing the D flat. So it's the same thing. Now, sometimes you can play both if you have time in the chord progression. So check this out. Here's a 2-5-1, D minor, G13, yield, tonal, tonal harmony, G13. Then we're going to pivot to the tritone and then resolve it. So either way, you can do them either way. So what I suggest you do is practice all your 2-5-1s using this kind of strategy. I think it's a little easier. You can kind of go to your things that you know. Play that chord that you know first. Then, in tandem with the other chord, play the tritone. Okay? So you can do this on your 2-5-1 and 4ths sheet. And if you do that, you'll see I marked in the tritones in that 4th column there. So look at the key of C. I have G7 in the 2nd column as well as D flat. Okay, and then look at the key of F. I have C7 as well as G flat 13 or F sharp, however you want to look at that. Look at the 3rd line down. I have F7 as well as B13. So what I would do is go through, and you see I marked these in red, but go down the whole page and mark in all your tritones. And then you can play through your 2-5-1s like this. And it sounds really cool. 2, 3, 4. 3 and 4. But 2. But 2. I'll just go into the next key of F to demonstrate. 3 and 4. This is the 2-5-1 exercise in 4ths. I like to go through around the circle, right? So we're going from C to F to B flat, E flat, etc. Okay? Here's the 3rd line. All right, so piano players use tritone substitutions constantly, as do bass players, as do soloists, as do improvisers. You can hear how that like, I was stepping out of the key of C and adding these yummy notes here, right? Here's the key of F. month-wise, we really use them a lot as well, but quarterly, we use them all the time. And it's totally within your right as a piano player to play as many of them as you want, and they fit with whatever the bass player plays, so you don't even have to worry about that. You know, they sound great either way. If a bass player is walking in the key of C, you can slide that in as a chromatic thing. It doesn't even affect the bass line. So really cool. So get to work on those. It might be a little hard to understand at first, but you'll get it. And the more you use them, you'll have a better understanding. And in the advanced class, we really get into a lot more of playing with these sorts of chords. So have fun, and more on that later. It's a work in progress.